So Senate Majority Leader John Thune betrayed House conservatives by compromising with Democrats on ICE and border security funding, enabling a 2-week Easter recess. Must be nice. RINO John Thune sold out to Chuck Schumer and his stable of leftist radicals, and then quickly jetted off with a private escort amid a government shutdown. So, obviously, we're not new here. This is typical Republican capitulation, and it's the type of capitulation the American people have come to expect. Actually, I would also classify it as political abuse. It's political abuse of the American electorate, where Congress is once again prioritizing their vacation over national security, or their vacation over doing what we all send them to do. They're prioritizing themselves over populist America. We're going to talk about it. We've got a great show for you. Happy Friday. The Paul Harrell program starts right now.
The Paul Harrell program.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I had a good interaction there with a few of you in the chat. Leading up to this, I know Will Johnson was on right before us on LFA TV, by the way. That's one of the places we're broadcasting here on LFA TV, over on Rumble, and really do appreciate it, broadcasting live from my home state of Arkansas. You know, one of the things I love, as I've only been on LFA TV now for about a month, I think. I think we've hit our month anniversary, I guess. One of the things I love about LFA TV is how decentralized it is. I love that you have, Will Johnson in Texas, and you've got, I believe, Hannah Faulkner in Tennessee, and just how people are all over the place, all across our great country, and it's decentralized, and we're all privileged, really, to be able to have a voice, be able to interact with you, and so I really do appreciate it. So a couple of things here in a little bit. I believe in about 10 minutes or so, we're going to be talking with Annie Cyrus, who has a new book out about the architecture of jihad. So I'm excited to talk to her, specifically because not only does she have a new book out, but she also grew up in Iran, and she lived in Iran since until she was 15 years old. And so I've never gotten to speak to anybody who lived in Iran. I've known other people whose parents did, and then they were born here, but I've never actually talked to somebody. So the fact of the matter that Iran is on our minds so much right now because we're in this war, and I'm on the let's not get boots on the ground, but I do want to, and I wasn't for it in the first place, but certainly just want us to accomplish our objectives, keep our troops safe, and get us home. But I just felt like it's a great opportunity to talk to somebody that knows a lot more about the context of the civilizational clashes here than I do, and many of you do. And so we're going to look to people that have actually have lived experience versus what we're getting, which is just depends on which headline you're reading. Certainly going to inform what you think. But before we do that, I did want to take this opportunity to slam John Thune and the Republicans in Congress before we get started, because, it is low-hanging fruit. But, this story, Republicans cave on ICE, and they basically separated this bill that was supposed to be, it was supposed to encompass several things, but instead, they don't want to fund ICE. They don't want to, allow the immigration enforcement to continue. And so there you have John Thune, Chuck Schumer there in the background. Don't know if that's an AI image. Who knows these days? But apparently this, shutdown lasts 42 days. That's how long that the Democrats have played this game. Again, this partial government shutdown. And after all of that, this report says, written by Demetrius Gardner, after all of that, what did the Republicans negotiate? A deal that funds most of DHS but deliberately carves out immigration and customs enforcement and parts of Customs and Border Protection, but no ICE funding, no CBP funding. So, obviously, somebody like John Thune is going to spin this as some sort of positive thing, and of course, they always love to come to us with excuses as to why they can't do what we vote to send them there to do. and they're still going to continue to defend the filibuster. J.D. Vance actually sat down in the White House with Benny Johnson today and talked about how ridiculous this recess is, and how they've left town and they haven't done their jobs. And he says, look, the filibuster, they don't have 50 votes. You need 50 Republican senators to vote to end the filibuster. J.D. Vance could then be the tie-breaking vote, but they don't have that. And so they're going to continue with this arcane structure. They're going to continue with this arcane rule that I think robs us of the government that we want. It robs us of a functional government, all by preventing either side, either extreme, and I'm fine using that word. It'd be great to be able to actually try out these ideas and figure out if they work or not, but we're not ever given the ability to do that because the uniparty gets to maintain control as long as they have this 60-vote threshold, and it's insane. And I would tell you this right now: if there were ever a moment where the Republicans got 60 votes, like had 60 senators, they would come up with more excuses as to why they can't pass voter ID or why they can't end mail-in ballots or whatever the case. They would come up with even more excuses. This is just the latest one, and it's one that's kind of kept this country in paralysis for, certainly for the last 50 years. And I don't know how long the rule's been in place. Probably that long, maybe even longer. This is Congressman Keith Shelf. I saw this tweet. He is from Texas, the 3rd Congressional District in Texas. He says, this is how it all went down last night. In the dead of night, with only 5 senators present on the floor and no one there to object, the Senate rushed through a DHS funding bill that deliberately left ICE and CBP unfunded. Now they're leaving town. No Save America Act, ICE, and CBP unfunded. Senate Republicans just gave the Democrats everything they wanted and more. Everything they wanted and more. Here is Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, because now this bill would presumably go to the House. So is he going to go along with this? It's a good question.
Hill is willing to fund all of the security and safety of the American people. We cannot believe it's come to that, but it has.
If the Senate gets that through the Senate, will you put it on the floor?
We'll have to see. We have to solve the problem, and it's very sad that Democrats are not interested in doing that.
Mr.
Yes.
Speaker, does that mean that you're not in favor of breaking the DHS funding bill apart, just funding TSA, just funding FEMA, having individual votes on each section?
We have never been in favor of breaking the bill up. Why? Because it's one of the 12 separate appropriations bills that is the most basic function of Congress to fund the government. And we did it in a bipartisan, bicameral manner. Remember, the contents of that bill were decided upon earlier by Democrats until they decided to hold the American people hostage in their long lines at the airports and with the safety of everybody on the line to make a political point. It is shameful. There is no way for them to defend this to the American people. And breaking it out I think it puts an exclamation point on what they've tried to do here. It's shameful. So many people have been through so many hardships because of this nonsense. And what we're concerned about is people may actually be hurt. More people harmed by criminal illegal aliens than are being protected by the Democrat Party. And we're sick of it.
Speaker Johnson, are you...
So,
Hill.
this whole thing is just so frustrating to me. And it should frustrate all of you. And I know it does. Because I hear that, and it's I can't help but just reiterate my previous point here, which is this is all because of the filibuster. This is all because of the silent filibuster. This is all because they have a rule in place that robs you and I of our politicians, our senators, from actually doing the work. You know, the work that you think that they do when you're in 8th grade civics class and you're learning about the 3 branches of government and you're learning about the 2 chambers of the legislative branch and the Senate is supposed... You think these people are, well, I have an idea, let's put it in a bill, let's get a vote on it. No. There's all these procedures and all these obstacles that can get in the way to make sure the people don't get what they want. And this is the big one. This is the big one. And President Trump... it's a big deal that President Trump, by the way, is saying to end this. This is a big deal. But J.D. Vance said something, Vice President Vance said something earlier today on this Benny Johnson interview that I thought was interesting. Slowly it's coming out here and there. But one of the things he said was that Republican senators, the 2, 3, or 4 Republican senators that don't want to get rid of the filibuster, they keep claiming, politically speaking, that, well, the Democrats are not going to get rid of the filibuster because they didn't the last time, and we don't want to get rid of the filibuster because they won't do it when they're in power. J.D. Vance makes an excellent point when he says, actually, the only reason the Democrats didn't get rid of the filibuster the last time was because Kristen Sinema, I believe of Arizona, and Joe Manchin said, no, we're not going to do this. But then the Democrats proceeded to destroy their political careers because Sinema and I think Manchin didn't go along with ending the filibuster the last time the Democrats were in control. The Democrat Party apparatus ended their political careers. And now Manchin was on his way out because he was old, but Sinema, she had, she's much younger, I think. So J.D. Vance is saying the fact that these Republican senators are believing that just doesn't make sense. And the fact is they are going to get rid of it. And I would submit to you that they know it doesn't make sense, but it's just a convenient political talking point, which would also mean that these Republican senators actually want. These Republican holdout senators that don't want to end the filibuster, they actually want, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats to end the filibuster because they themselves are actually sympathetic to their ideas, and they don't want the Republicans to get their policies on the books and the American people to like them. They don't want the Republicans to get, and I say Republicans because at this point there's just so many bad Republicans I don't even like. They don't want the American people to get what we want because you can get some laws on the books, and once the laws are on the books, once they're codified, it makes it very difficult for their agenda, especially with the elections. Because if we can take back how we pick our leaders, if we can take them back from the cheaters, take it back from the soulless machines that are counting our votes, that are hackable, if we can take that back, then we have a lot better shot of actually changing Washington, D.C. for the better. And they don't want that. So these Republican holdouts are really leftist. And I know that also because they don't actually want to be put on record having to vote for something that in their heart of hearts they'll vote against. And so they're using the filibuster shield. Likewise, you have Republicans who are coming out saying that they're for getting rid of the filibuster. Many of them I don't trust. Because right now, it's the safest bet. If you've got the 3 or 4, Olympia or Susan Collins, and then you've got Murkowski, as long as these people are the holdouts and the Republicans don't have 50 senators to break the filibuster, J.D. Vance would be the 51st, then the other ones who are coming out and saying, yeah, I'm for getting rid of the filibuster, they can do that because it's a safe position because they know it's never going to happen. There are so many things that are done over there that are everything is designed to go on record, to avoid going on record, to go on record the least amount of times as possible, unless it's something safe. No real change. And the American people get left out in the cold, and of course our country is getting, in a lot of ways, because of their inaction, worse and worse and worse. And what little domestic what good domestic policy has been changed through an executive order must be codified, or they'll just reverse it all. They'll reverse it all. And this is where we are. So they're going to scoot away. They fly away on their jet. Oh, did we have that? I forgot that. We had, here it is. This is, this actually is a photo of, or a video of John Thune leaving there. You see him leaving with a private escort there. Now, I don't know if he's flying Delta or not. We ran this story. So, they get their little recess and then he flies away. I don't know if he flies Delta or not, because we did run that story where Delta had shut down their desk. Delta shut down the desk, the concierge desk or whatever it is for congressmen, because they're sick of this and they wanted them to actually pay a little bit. It doesn't look like he's having to wait in any lines, though. And let's be honest, they probably never are going to have to, because it's rules for thee, not for me. All right, so I told you about this a little earlier at the top of the show. that the fact that we have Iran is all, it's all in the news, obviously. A lot of people are speculating what's going to happen this weekend. President Trump giving another reprieve, saying we're not going to destroy some of these energy facilities for another, I don't know, at this point, was it another 10 days? Now is it 9 or 8 days? And so I got the opportunity. I think this is kind of one of those things where it works out perfectly, where Annie Cyrus has a new book out called The Architecture of Jihad. And it just came out this week. So if you guys want to go check it out, I know it would certainly help. I know when a book gets released on Amazon, if you get so many sales in the first week, it can actually get catapulted onto the front page or the top seller list or something like that. And so I just want to welcome Annie to the program, and I want to say, Annie, congratulations on your new book, The Architecture of Jihad. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much on the congratulations, and it is great to be on your show. It's been a while.
Yes.
We've known each other. We've worked together for a while, and it's good that I finally made it on camera with you.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited. I'm excited for your perspective, your point of view. But the first thing I'd like to talk about is what made you, first of all, how long you've been working on this book, and what made you want to write this, want to get this pen to paper?
Sure. So the idea hit me last year after the 12 Days War. And then I've been pretty much working on it since then, which would be early July of 25. It is a self-published book. It was the fact of, well, good luck getting most publishing companies to want to touch such a controversial topic. So that added to the whole process of getting the book out, but I'm glad it's out. The reason was the 12 Days War. Well, more like the celebration that I witnessed in America after the ceasefire of 12 Days War. As an Iranian American, I was very disappointed when the ceasefire was announced. And then I looked around like, why are my fellow Americans so happy about this? There shouldn't be a ceasefire. And I came to realize because since September 11, a lot of Americans have come to realize there's such a thing as jihad. They call it Islamic terrorism. But it has slowed down. Therefore, there's no real threat. So I realized as an ex-Muslim who was raised right in the heart of Islamic teaching, from a Quran teacher being my mother and a sheikh being my father, the best way for me is to write a book to show my fellow Americans or anyone who doesn't understand Islam, including many Muslims who don't even understand Islam, that jihad doesn't mean Allahu Akbar, boom, blow it up. Jihad is way more than that. So I broke it into 10 categories of different phases of jihad. In the book, we go over the actual text from Islamic teaching to time of Muhammad, to historic expansion of that specific jihad into our modern day, using real life cases that we have tried on our courts, from Germany to Canada to US to UK to France, you name it. I have those cases in the book. And I conclude each chapter with a practical countermeasure section where a lot of people know and they're like, okay, now what do I do? So this book will tell you exactly what to do without necessarily relying on your lawmakers to reverse this damage and take our country back when it comes to the conquer of Islam.
So it's fascinating because, everybody is watching what's going on in New York with Mondani, and, you see these videos coming out about, the Muslim prayer calls and things like that. We did a whole segment on it, or at least I can't shut up about the video of Mondani in the mayoral office, and I know there's a lot of Muslims there, and they're doing prayer, or they're eating or whatever. And what struck me, Annie, was the lack of furniture. There's a lot of, and so it got me kind of on this deep dive of, wow, furniture. Like I never really thought of furniture being a kind of a Western, and I'm not saying there's not non-Western countries that have furniture or don't have furniture. I know, but I just couldn't get over the fact that there was no furniture in the room, and it just struck me in a way that I'm having trouble describing. But do you understand what I mean?
I absolutely understand what you're saying. You're referring to the video that came out recently. It was a conclusion of Ramadan for Muslims. It was a day or two before the end of Ramadan, and they all gathered there per invitation, mainly Muslims, to join to, celebrate the end of Ramadan. And what you saw, it's not a Western concept to them. So in Islam, part of jihad, which a lot of Muslims will tell you, jihad word itself means a struggle, inner struggle, which is accurate. Part of that struggle is to stay humble and not have fancy homes, cars, technology, furniture, bed. All of that comes with the practice. So you have so much of nothing, the cliche of you'll have nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah, you'll
That
own.
really applies. That literally applies to Islam. You have to live such a zero grounded life that at any moment, if you have to give your life, you're willing to do it, because their understanding, or at least their teaching, is the more you have, the more you're attached to this world. Turning you into a jihadi will become hard. Let's go to Iran, for example. In Islamic Republic of Iran, there are mansions, there are families with full furniture, fancy furniture, average furniture. Some can't afford it, so they have less fancy. But if you go to any of the leaders' homes, you'll notice there's no furniture. There's no bed. If there's a bed, it's a very small, full-size metal bed with a thin mattress. It's part of the training. They call it living a humble life, just like they call hijab a symbol of modesty. But technically, the underlying part is, if you are a true Muslim, you live life to bare minimum. You don't do anything. So it's more of a kafir or non-believer aspect to them than Western culture, which at the end of the day, Westerners are the highest level of, enemy to Islam. So it makes sense.
Can you
the
tell
way you
me
look at it.
tell me a little bit about I have so many questions, and so I'm going to start here. So what was it like? You lived in Iran until you're 15. So can you please just explain to us first of all what it was like? And you say you left Islam. Did that happen? Because I know there are Christians in Iran, or at least that's what we hear. Obviously, they can't be public about it. But can you tell us a little bit about what happened? What was it like? I know this is a loaded question, but what was it like living in Iran up until you're 15, and then you eventually get here? Can you just tell us your story, I guess?
Of course. So, yes, to answer your questions, there are millions of Christians inside Iran and thousands of underground churches, but yes, all in secret, because the punishment can be anything from life in prison to execution. If you preach your Christianity, then you will be killed. That's for that part. So the aspect of my upbringing in Iran, inside home, around father, portion of my life around my mother, was consumed by Islam. Until age 7, not really. It was just being a kid. But from age 7, starting a school, I had to temporarily wear the hijab to learn how to develop it by the time it becomes mandatory for me. There was a lot of confusion and questions between school and home. Inside home, pretty much by age 8, I started getting prepared to become an adult woman, because at age 9, legally, by the law of the land, I would be an adult woman. So everybody was trying to get me there, from learning the prayer, learning the call to prayer, learning how to fast, doing the dua, wearing the hijab properly. All of that started at age 8, when I received an invitation from my school, on the invitation with a date on when my celebration of adulthood will start at age 9. By age 9, I became an adult woman. Not just me. Every 9-year-old in the country became legally an adult woman. With that comes such as you're an adult person, so any crime you commit, you will face consequences on your own. You'll be punished or tried as an adult. With that comes the fact that now you're an adult your guardian, your male guardian, which in my case was my father, but if the father isn't there, it could be grandfather, uncle, older brother, depending on the situation. Your male guardian can decide for you to get married and go from there. In my case, my male guardian did not decide for me to become somebody's wife right away, but I started acting up too much. So from age 9, technically 10, because until 10 I was never arrested, but as of age 10 until becoming somebody's wife at age 13, I pretty much got arrested for crimes such as singing publicly, showing my hair from the back of my hijab, not purposely, having nail polish, going to a party where boys and girls are all in the same room, sitting in the front seat as a passenger in a taxi, and on and on. With that came the, courts, arrests, detention center, prison time, lashes, until I reached the age of 13, where my father decided it's time for me to become somebody's wife. So I became somebody's wife who was willing to pay the proper price that my father set for me, which was $50 American dollars, and about a month of personal opium use for my father. So I became that guy's wife. I stayed his wife per their terminology. Later in America, I learned that I was his sex slave for about a year and a half, until my grandmother from my mother's side hired smugglers to smuggle me out of the country. At that point, I was 15. I was smuggled out to Turkey, went to UN.
Can I interrupt you?
Absolutely.
You say your grandmother smuggled you, arranged to have you smuggled out of Iran via Turkey. Why? Why do you know why?
Because my grandmother from my mother's side was not a Muslim, was very aware that there's a different life because she grew up during the life before the Islamic Revolution. And she was pretty set that if I stay, if I don't leave, she's not going to have me for more than a year or two. I will cause a scenario where either my father or my husband will kill me. So in her mind, I had a 50-50 chance of surviving if I left. And that was her last message when she told me when we were done. But when I was about to walk away, she said, "Don't ever forget where you come from, but you'll never look back. You'll never come back. There's a 50% chance you make it out there. But if you stay here for the next year or two, I'm going to lose you. So go."
Wow, that is harrowing. You talk about how you were prepared for womanhood, or you were officially a woman at age 9, and I think about, my daughter's about to turn 9 in, I don't know, 5 months or so. Just totally different culture. And I know I've heard it. I mean, I know this, but to hear your story puts things in a completely different perspective for me. So go ahead and continue with your story. You get smuggled via Turkey, and tell us how you wound up here.
Sure. So I was smuggled to Turkey, and I went to UN. And believe it or not, it's, for a lot of people, this is shocking, but there was a time when UN actually did UN work, and that was luckily my time. I sought asylum in the backpack I had that my grandmother put together. I had all the documentation I needed to prove my case. Got my United Nations asylum approval in about 6 days, and I picked my final destination. And I want to say this because I think this is important for a lot of Americans to know how outsiders look at America. I had no vision. I'm 15. I don't really know world history or countries. So I asked the lawyer at UN, and I said, name a country that they will leave me alone and let me be me, even if I can think half of their man. And the answer was America. So I had 3 options. You could pick 3 destinations. I wrote America on all 3 of them. And they were like, if America doesn't accept you, you need to have a backup country. I was like, I either go there or I don't want to go anywhere. I'm done. I want to go where they let me be me. So, and they did. There were delays for me coming. I spent over 3 years in Turkey as a refugee. Number 1 reason was I was an underage kid with no guardian, and U.S. was not allowing me in the country until I turn 18 or until I find a family in America who's willing to adopt me. Which second case came to. After I turned 18, they contacted me and they said my flight has been issued. The second reason, of course, I was the second batch of Middle Eastern refugees to come to America after September 11th. When I finished my first interview at the embassy, September 11th happened. So there was a gap there as well. But I went through embassy, 2 interviews, medical testing, all of that. When I received my I-94 visa, which is an asylum seeker visa that never expires, I got my Welcome to United States of America package, got on my flight, flew from Istanbul, Turkey to Frankfurt, Germany to Miami, Florida to Chicago, where my story in America started. And I was 18 at that point.
Okay, so you get to America. What's your first impression? So that's and feel free to take it wherever you want to go. And then I'm curious, when did you reject Islam, or when did you leave? I guess technically you could say you started to leave when you literally left Iran, but when did you say, okay, Islam is not for me?
So, funny story. I rejected Islam at age 9. In order to be a full adult Muslim, you have to say the Shahada. On the day I referred to, where there was a ceremony for all 9-year-olds across the country to receive our certification of adulthood, in the room, I did not repeat the Shahada after the Imam. I didn't. So by definition, I never became a Muslim. I was labeled a Muslim in an Islamic country by birth, but I didn't. And the reason I rejected it at that moment was because when I was being prepared around between 8 and 9, and I'm constantly told I need to learn these verses for my prayer and these verses for call to prayer in Arabic, where my mother tongue is Farsi. And at some point I turn, I'm like, wait, if this guy created me, why is he not bilingual? And why do I have to become bilingual? And the answer I received was all I needed, even as a kid, to realize something is off. And the answer was basically I got hit in the face, followed by, you don't question Allah. I was like, oh, okay. So I barely can read and write my own mother tongue, and you expect me to learn a secondary language now. And it was frustrating because I would mispronounce and I would get frustrated, and then my dad would be very mad at me, and his hands were a little loose on the slapping. So I never said the Shahada. So I know I'm not even an ex-Muslim, but I'm labeled an ex-Muslim because I was born in a country that everybody born is a stamped Muslim. Now, as a more of a figure of realizing this thing is not even a religion, was probably about a year or so before my escape, when everything formed in my head, when I faced it all. When my father was selling me, I asked him, why would you do that? And I even tried to make threats, like, I'm going to go to the police. And he opened the Quran and he read me from Quran chapter 4, verse 3, said, look, if he can afford the proper price for you, he can have you. And from there, I was like, wait, so I'm an adult at 9. This country lashed me under name of Quran, telling me that everything I committed is punishable by lashing or prison time. Now my father's selling me, telling me
you were given lashes, correct?
Yes. At different occasions, different numbers. One time I was sentenced to 75 lashes. My grandmother, again, came to rescue. She purchased 50 of them, but I had to serve 25. Another time I was sentenced to 35, and none of them were purchasable, so I had to serve all of them. Based on my calculation, early on, 10 years ago, I was lashed over 100 times. Different occasions, but over 100 times. And I want to be very clear, I was lashed. I was not whipped. So don't have the image that I have this messed up, scarred skin on my back. I don't. I was lashed, which is basically like a belt that they hit you with. I'm not trying to undermine it. Trust me, it hurts like hell. But some people automatically think like, oh, her back is all like messed up. No, I wasn't whipped. I was lashed. But
well,
yes,
I appreciate the context there. I think that's good. Okay, so you get to Miami, and what was your impression?
The Miami moment, honestly, the only thing I can remember, it was about 8 or so hours inside the airport. First thing, they put us all, very respectfully, they put us all in a room when we landed from Germany. And an immigration officer walked in and said, one by one, they're going to take us. We're going to do a final interview. We're going to have to go through some process. And my process was just a verification or identification, my flight process, and then they did a fingerprint, handprint, footprint, eye laser scan, and confirm my identity, who I am, and everything. And two officers, because it was my connection flight. I was flying to my final destination, Chicago, next morning, and they walked me to a motel very close to the airport. I was locked in the motel room that night. When I say locked, yes, the door was actually locked. And it wasn't they were mistreating me. They wanted to make sure they're not losing an 18-year-old who hasn't made it to her final destination to be handed over. The only thing I remember was am I here? During that 8 hours or so, am I going to make it out of that door? Are they going to deport me? Did some Muslim kill somebody yesterday? Now they're going to deport all of us. And when I finally made it out of that door, I stepped back and I said, it's like a sauna out there. It was August.
Oh, wow.
I was like, it's like a sauna out there. So they actually gave me a bottle of water, and then I stepped out again. And to be honest, I was lost between excitement and absolute terrifying thought of, okay, we made it, but now what? That was my very first impression in Miami. But I did crash pretty good that night. I fell asleep like a baby. They had to wake me up in the morning so I wouldn't miss my flight. They actually knocked at my door, the agents. They're like, ma'am, we got to get you to your flight. And I was like, I have no idea what they're saying, but I guess I need to wake up. I should probably say I landed in Miami knowing the following words. America, mispronounced as America. I knew dollar because I was purchased through dollar. And hello, I did know how to say hello.
So when did you think, you said you came here, you picked here from the UN because you were under the impression that America will let you be you or be free. When did you think, okay, yeah, that's right, I'm going to be able to be myself? Like, was there a moment when you realized I made the right choice?
Yes, it was. It was. That moment was far from my arrival. But that moment happened early, I want to say October of 2015. In early October 2015, I was walking to work. My work was very close to my home, so I was walking. And I grabbed my phone. And I recorded a video. Back then, Facebook didn't have live streaming yet. You had to record and post. While walking to work, I recorded a video, very upset. And I said, those who are watching, I need to correct Hussein Obama. The morning of that day, Obama went to a mosque and he said, let me be very clear, Islam is part of America. And I was so heavily triggered with that video that I made my own video saying, Islam cannot be part of anything. It will start as being part of it and then it will consume it. I stopped recording, posted it, went to work. And when I left work, I came to realize that video has gone viral with over 5 million views, and my friend request is blowing up, and my messenger is blowing up, and my boss called me saying, you have to make a decision. I was like, what do you mean? It's like, you either come back to work tomorrow or you're going to have to continue the fight you just started this morning.
Wow.
And that moment was when I realized, wait, you came to America for this very reason, not for the fight, but for the chance to pick the fight. So I thanked him for understanding. I resigned immediately, and 11 years later, here we are.
Wow.
That was the moment I realized, yes, I can be labeled and I can carry bounties, but I can still be the outspoken survivor of Sharia to warn my fellow Americans inside America. And the government is not going to arrest me, and the government is not going to torture me, and the government most certainly isn't going to hang me at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Wow. It's an incredible story. Last question about your background. Do you still keep in contact with your grandmother or your mother or your father? Do you know where they are or if they're doing okay?
Grandmother. She died of natural causes in 2008. Father. I like to refer to him as my male guardian because he doesn't deserve the word father. He passed away about 7 months or so after I arrived in America. So that would have been early March of 2003. And mother passed away. She lost her battle to cancer in 2018.
Wow.
Yes. Do I still have family members in Iran? I do. Most have either disowned me from the father's side. From the mother's side, for their own safety, they cut all ties with me because when I started doing this, I could do it in America, but any ties to me inside Iran would have created problem for them. So they all cut ties with me.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so this was I think a really needed interview in the context of the situation, considering what's going on in the Middle East right now. Obviously, you've painted a picture of a civilizational clash that is ongoing, and I want to talk more about your book here in a minute, because I really don't want to lose light of that. The ideology, the law, the global strategy driving Islam's multi-front expansion, and I understand the foreword written by Dr. Bill Warner. As a matter of fact, I know I've interviewed Bill Warner probably 10 years ago when I was on radio. I think he even came to Arkansas one time, and I got to sit down and really learned a lot from him, specifically about the Crusades. They're just fascinating examples of how we've been lied to about that in a lot of ways. But I wanted to go back to something that you said at the beginning of the interview here. You said something about the 12-day war. That's when you started to write the book, or you had the idea, and people were excited when the ceasefire happened, and you were not excited with the ceasefire. So I'd like to understand. I think I know the answer to this as somebody who's come out of this, as we just talked about the millions of Christians who are living underground there. But I just want you to know, Annie, like one of the reasons I voted for President Trump personally, one of those reasons was because I did not want to go to another war in the Middle East. Specifically, don't want American soldiers, boots on the ground in the Middle East. And now we're here, and I pray for our troops. I hope that they're kept safe. And that's kind of where I'm coming from on it. That's my hesitancy with all of this. But I want to get your perspective, because obviously the audience just heard your entire story, your entire testimony. And so you may have a totally different point of view or a slightly different point of view. So tell us, go ahead and talk about the 12-day war, but talk about what's going on now. Like, what's your position on this?
Let me start by saying I am with you on that 100%. Last year during 12 days war, this year, my stance has been we need to stay out of it. Not because this is not our fight. I want to be very clear. Islam has been at war with humanity for 1400 years. And I have documented that in my book. So this is not my bad experiences with Islam. This is documentation. Islamic Republic of Iran's regime has been at war with America for 47 years. Again, where did we start with Iran? They took our citizens, our employees from our embassy inside Tehran, held them hostages for 444 days. Some testified later that they were tortured, they were starved, they faced mocked executions. They picked this war with us from day one. This happened in 1979. The hostages were released early 1980. So they started this war with America. So when I said we need to stay out of it, it's not because I'm in some denial bubble saying this isn't our fight. No, it is. But the reason I said we need to stay out of it, two reasons. Number one, Israel was handling it perfectly. They were doing just fine. They had a plan. They worked on their plan for years. They have Mossad agents who know the streets and alleys and back alleys inside Iran and Tehran. We didn't need to go in. But I agree with you. Now we're there every day. I pray for our troops. I pray for President Trump. I pray for Pete Hegseth to make the right call, right decision. All of that matters. But I want to make sure you understand that I did not want America involved either. Number two, the second reason, respectfully, I love America and I will fight for America to my last breath. However, American foreign policy has always been a disaster in the Middle East.
Yes.
That's the second reason I said we should stay out of it. This isn't about President Trump. This is about American foreign policy. Even if we go to war with Iran, the outcome might possibly be a disaster. So let's just stay out of it. All that being said, the 12 days war, all 12 days, as I was reporting, I kept saying, we need to stay out of it. We need to stay out of it. And every time I was asked why regarding 12 days war, I said, if we get involved, we're going to go for a ceasefire. And look what we have achieved with Gaza and Hamas during all of these ceasefires. Absolutely nothing. Every time we got a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, we ended up buying time for Hamas. They went back, regrouped, came back stronger until we reached October 7th. We're going to play the same pattern with the regime. And we kind of are, because we got them a ceasefire last year, and we're kind of negotiating with them now. And if this negotiation ends up with another ceasefire, we just recreated the failed pattern with Hamas. We just recreated that with Hamas's grandpa, which is IRGC. And I'm worried that all of these ceasefires are going to finally achieve the American October 7th that IRGC has been talking about for almost 7 years now. I'm sorry, 6 years now.
You're talking about another 9/11 Black Swan type event. That's what you're worried about here on American soil?
Yes, but way larger and bigger. From what I've been tracking through IRGC, we're not talking about one attack, and I'm not undermining what happened on September 11 at all. But the coordination based on the number they have inside America, there's a potential for 75 attacks of 7-man groups across America at the same time. And we can all thank Biden for this one for sure. Absolutely for sure. But the confirmed number of sleeper cells of IRGC, now I want your audience to understand, when we say Hamas, we say Houthis, we say Hezbollah, they're all IRGC. That's where they get their funding. That's where they get their training. That's where they get their weapons. And I also want you to pay attention that it is confirmed that IRGC has had a deal with the Mexican cartel for not a year or two, but again, over 10 years of collaboration and partnership. That's for anyone who thinks, why did I say thanks to Biden? That border cartel, IRGC, sleeper cells slipped in. That's the connection. But yes, that is what I'm concerned, that if we keep allowing the Islamic regime and IRGC to breathe, we will end up where Israel did on October 7th.
Well, so there's a lot there. I just wonder about. Well, let me ask you this, because I've had a different. Maybe, I don't know if it's a different theory, but I've often wondered, in a theocracy like Iran, and again, you grew up there. You were there until you were 15. In a theocracy like Iran, I've often wondered if the people at the top really believe what it is they preach to keep the masses in line and in control. And I'd like to get your opinion on that. And what I mean by that is, does self-preservation factor in to the leaders of Iran? And I know right now, we've had the Ayatollah's been killed, and the next Ayatollah's been killed, and I understand that, but just in terms of, well, let's just take the nuclear narrative, the narrative that if Iran did get a nuke, they would use it, which would mean the total end of their civilization, one way or another. Their entire civilization their standard of living, which I'm sure is quite nice if they want it to be, right? If they don't want to, just sleep on a metal bed like you were saying earlier. So I guess my question is, because we are told that they are a theocracy, which they are, but that they are crazy, okay? Like they're not just evil, but they're also crazy and, wanting to bring about the end of the world. And I certainly know that is taught, but do you think the leaders at the top really believe that the way we're told here in America?
They do, yes. And I would say even when what you hear in America is the sugar-coated version of them. And I give you some examples. Now, let me talk about nuke, you said. I have been one of the voices that has always said, if Iran, so Iran already has nuke. But that's an argument we can have another time. But based on scenario here, if Iran comes to have nuclear weapon, they are not, I repeat, they are not going to use it on Israel. Their own teaching, their own text, commands the Holy Land, Israel, to not be contaminated. It has to stay clean. There is no way they're going to nuke Israel because that will defeat the purpose of their fight. So that's for that. Will they nuke America? Absolutely. But do they have that capability today? That was not the urgency that needed us to go into the country or the region for that matter. Now back to the leaders. We have had cases inside Iran during the first supreme leader. I don't mean the one that just was killed. The first one in 79, Khomeini, to the next one, Khamenei, who have issued fatwas being judgment against their own loved ones when they stepped out of the line. They've done that.
So, yeah, okay, I mean, so that would be the answer to my question because, I mean, if you're going to do that to your own kids, right, then, yeah, I mean, if you're ever going to pull your punches and not be consistent with whatever your dogma or theology is when your kids are now going to be, subject to the death or torture or whatever, yeah, so if they're willing to do it to their own kids, then that would answer my question.
And we can even go further. When there were rumors that Iran or IRGC has named Khamenei's son as the new supreme leader, of course, I addressed that. That's a very complicated explanation. But the very first thing that came out the first moment was the fact that Khamenei, the supreme leader himself, has made it very clear that if they do kill me, you cannot put my son in power. He already dethroned the son before dying because based on Sharia, that is not allowed. The son does not have the qualifications of a supreme leader based on Sharia. Therefore, if you put him in power just because you're desperate, you're breaking the law of Islam, and I will not accept that. See, that's they're willing to take power away from their own kids if it doesn't apply under Sharia. But we need to be also very clear. These are the top leaders. This doesn't apply to all members of government. There are those inside Iran or any other Islamic government who end up being punished by a higher level because they kind of exclude themselves from all of it. It applies to the people, but not them. So I don't want to put a big brush that all of them follow Sharia to the T, but those who don't always end up being punished by the top leaders, at least inside Iran.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So I mean, I certainly, and I know you hope you're wrong as well on potential attacks here and that sort of thing. Do you think we're going to send ground troops? Do you? I would assume you agree with me that you don't want ground troops to go in.
No, I don't. Do I think we will? At this point, truth be told, I hope I don't offend too many of your audience, but nobody can read where Trump is going with this. Nobody can. We are going from really harsh threats to, well, they gave us a gift. Let me give them 5 days. Why don't I expand it to 10 days? And then day 2, we hit them. It's, who knows However, I do pray every day that we do not go for boots on the ground. Let me tell you, yes, number one, I don't want our soldiers to have to face what they're gonna face if they step into Iran. I don't know if you covered it. I don't know if your audience have heard it, but this is not a new thing. But IRGC just renewed an old order of Iran-Iraq war that now they're drafting boys as young as 12 and up to fight. Our soldiers are going to have to face kids as soldiers. The trauma of Iraq and Afghanistan is plenty for them. I don't want them to have to face that. Now, on the Iranian side of me, I'm concerned because, one, I know why IRGC did this. They're hoping the Iranian people who are against IRGC are going to be forced to fight for IRGC in place of their kids, which is even worse because then I have to watch my fellow Iranians and fellow Americans fight each other over something that doesn't need to happen. We do not need to go inside. There is no need for boots on the ground. There isn't. I still say we've done a great job. We've done an amazing job. It is time to step back and let Israel finish them. And furthermore, let the Iranian people come back on the streets and finish it themselves. But nobody's asking me for advice, so I just keep it to myself.
No, I understand. It is, man, it's such a complex situation. All right, so let's talk about your book. Again, The Architecture of Jihad, and it is Inside the Ideology, Law, and Global Strategy Driving Islam. So, and I learned this, back in the day. But a lot of people forget the nation of Egypt, right? Used to be a Christian country, and via immigration, it now no longer is, or it's certainly not what it once was. So, what are your thoughts on this? Immigration's a big part of this, right? I've been told a lot of people like to think that America has magic soil, or they don't say it like this, but this is how I would describe it: that anybody can be an American, and I know this, and I know you're from Iran, you're now an American, and you've obviously assimilated in that sort of thing, and that's good. But not everybody does that, Annie. And we're in a situation, if we just look at New York, okay, this is a conquered country. It's a conquered nation. And it's not just with Islam, although I know that's what we're going to focus here. But, I mean, you've got 90-foot tall monkey statues in Texas now, that are of other lowercase g gods, right? So, I mean, you look around America in a lot of different areas, and it looks like we lost a war. And in New York, that's certainly true when you're now hearing the call to prayer over, public loudspeakers. So immigration, right? That is a key tool for how Islam spreads, correct?
Absolutely. So, as I said in the book, I'm sorry. Can I say something when you said, I don't know, apparently somebody said everybody can be American. No. I know Americans who were born in America and still aren't Americans. We call them liberals.
Yes.
Just saying. No, it's actually very hard to be American. Very hard. I call myself a very proud American. And I say that because regardless of who's in the office, I don't lose vision. The vision is the Constitution, not the man, not the party, not the law. It is the Constitution. If you do not respect the American Constitution, you do not get to call yourself an American. And furthermore, if you're not willing to stand for the most unique Constitution ever written in human history, you're definitely not American. Okay. I can now answer your question.
Okay.
I just had to get that out of my system because I don't like it. People are like, it's so easy to be like.
No, I so appreciate that you're confirming what I say. And I guess this modern liberalism has adopted this concept that anybody can be an American, and we can just let everybody come here. And that's obviously not the case, because if you're bringing another culture and you're going to then use our system, and there are some cultures that just are not compatible with with America that was, fundamentally based on really just a bunch of countries that had already learned to live together because they had fought each other for, hundreds of years in Western Europe. I mean, that was the backbone of what created the country that we have now, and now it's been changed. It's been systematically changed, and for whatever reason, I think New York City kind of puts that myth to rest. What's going on in New York City right now destroys this 20th century idea where anybody can be an American. That's obviously not the case. So
Absolutely, yes. And let's not forget Dearborn, Michigan.
or Minnesota. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. But to answer your question, yes, immigration, jihad, which the phrase used by Islam is hijrah, is absolutely one of the main players. So the way I broke this in the book, we have two major main categories, which is the classical jihad, and then you have the modern jihad. Now, just because we call them modern doesn't mean they're not rooted in Islam and Muhammad didn't practice them. It's just that they have found their modern way of practicing rather than the old way of practicing. And migration jihad is under the classical jihad. Historically, well, let's start with the text itself. In the text in the Quran, you find where it says, migrate to spread Islam. I'm giving you the short version of the verse, but it's there. And then there's Muhammad, who migrated from Mecca to Medina because he was failing Mecca and he didn't have the power. So he migrated to Medina. Now, this is where it might be interesting for anyone who still thinks these ceasefires have a meaning, or even Abraham Accords have any meanings. Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina, not as a refugee, not as someone who was escaping persecution. No, he made a deal with the government of Medina. In return, they would give him safe haven and his people in Medina. When he arrived in Medina, he broke every promise, every agreement, built his first mosque ever, and built his military inside it. We call it hudna. In translation of English, is deception during time of war. A Muslim is allowed to shake your hand as a kafir, agree to all your terms for as long as they need to regroup and become strong enough to come back and take you out. That's another form of jihad, where they will sign any peace deal you put in front of them. And that's what we've been experiencing also with Hamas. But yes, Mohammed has started migration from there. Historically, migration has conquered plenty of lands. And today in America, I would say second most applied jihad is migration. The first one is political jihad. The first major jihad we're facing in America is political jihad.
Okay, expand on that. What do you mean by that, political jihad?
So political jihad is when you enforce, well, the modern day of it is Hussein Obama, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Keith Allison, Zohran Mamdani. When a Sharia
Isn't John Brennan a Muslim now too?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Okay, so I'm just throwing him in there as well.
Oh, no, if you want to name names, it's a long list. As we speak right now, before we head to midterm, as we speak, over 280 Sharia-obeying Muslim are in offices in America from local, state, and federal. 280 plus of them. And that is political jihad. When you start with smaller numbers, you start coming in, you infiltrate enough seats, local, state, or federal, enough seats to be taken by you until you become majority in numbers. Then you don't call for peace anymore. You just flip all the laws and start obeying Sharia, or at least enforcing Sharia, that is. So that's the major one we're facing since 2018. So Obama did what Obama did. And that's a topic we can talk about I can talk about Obama Islamization of America for a good 48 hours. Maybe I should write a book about it. But anyhow, after Obama from 2018, they started testing it with Ilhan and Rashida, trained and mentored by Keith Allison. Now, let me remind your audience, Keith Ellison was not born a Muslim. Keith Ellison is a convert to Islam. And the reason I bring this up is there is no difference. When you accept the system of Islam, it doesn't matter if you converted to it, if you were born and raised in it, if you came to it at age 60, the system dictates the same behavior. You see the same behavior from Keith Ellison that you saw from Hussein Obama, that you see from Ilhan Omar. So right now we're facing, but so far based on my putting together, we are facing about another 30 to 35 candidates hitting us on midterm. So right now that's the number one jihad, political jihad, as they try to conquer our offices, local, state, and federal. And the second one is migration jihad. Those are the two fastest growing jihad we're facing in America. And most people, again, have no idea they even exist.
So I would say that if you look at Europe, I think at the beginning of President Trump's term, second term, you had Vice President J.D. Vance talking about the speech controls in Europe. Then I think Marco Rubio, a month or two ago, did the same thing at a speech in Europe. So this coming, I guess the first laws are going to be, or you feel free to respond, but would that be accurate? Like maybe their first political goals would be to start limiting speech?
Absolutely. We already have Ilhan Omar, who pushed the bill or introduced the bill of anti-Islamophobia, global anti-Islamophobia. She pushed it on the floor in 2021. The moment there is enough majority of them to vote it in, what do you think they're going to do? Immediately, anti-Islamophobia bill is going to become a law. Just like it happened in Canada. I was invited in 2017 to an event in Canada to speak on motion, what was motion M103 back then, anti-Islamophobia in Canada. We did what we could to help them understand, but it ended up being a law. In Canada right now, there's a law that stops you. Like if I'm banned from entering Canada. I can go to visit, but I'm not allowed to attend any events in Canada because I'm labeled the anti-Sharia speaker. It is illegal for me to go to Canada, even as an American. It's not allowed for me to go to Canada and say the things I'm saying right now on your show.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And the bill is sitting right now. You can just look it up. Rashida Tlaib, 2021, Anti-Islamophobia Global Act. The bill is sitting there. They just need enough numbers to push it and turn it into law. And then I need to, I don't know, I'll find a new career, no problem.
I actually don't think you'll stop speaking. Honestly, I don't think any of us will. Then we also have what's going on in Minnesota in the fraud. So that kind of, to me, goes in with the immigration. Like when we saw the reporting from Nick Shirley, we saw all this fraud, this generational wealth. Like, so the average American right now is struggling. We have high prices, and there's so much at play here, and I don't really know what comes first, the chicken or the egg. I know in the mid-level ranks of your liberals, progressives, or communists, they're diehard believers in their. It's a religious fervor to them, not necessarily Islam, but the wokeness, the hey, we've got to come in and we got to bring these third world immigrants into our country, and we've got to make them business owners, right? They wouldn't be business owners otherwise, but we'll make them business owners because then we can say, see, the third worlders are just these hardworking Americans that own their own businesses, which is a whole lot of work, and there's a whole lot of work there. But we're struggling. The average American is struggling, and then the government is giving these people generational wealth. To really sit at home and just spend time with their families, by the way. Wouldn't that be nice? And it's all done in the name of multiculturalism. I mean, to your point, I mean, we now have that. I would say that's also political jihad. You have Minnesota is a union of the political and the immigration, because you're using the political system to make the immigration process easier. Not only it's desirable, it's always been desirable to come to America, but it sure as heck is desirable if you're going to come here and get a fake business and all of this money and you can have all the leering sinners you want, right? I mean, do you see what I'm talking about? That there's a union there between the political and the immigration.
Yes, but actually, this is where I'm going to introduce two other faces of jihad for you. One is financial jihad. One is missionary jihad. They both support the other two fronts. So missionary jihad, part of it is actually the interfaith dialogue. I'm sure you've discussed that with other people before. The other part of it is...
No, stop right there. I actually haven't, but I think I know what interfaith dialogue is, but can you give us a definition of that?
Of course, interfaith dialogue is the new cool thing where pastors come into their congregation and say, listen, I want you to go to this mosque and listen to this wonderful imam who believes in Jesus, just like with you. And if you like, just join him, leave Christianity and become Muslim. I'm not even over-exaggerating, people. That's exactly how an interfaith dialogue works. Not a single imam sends a Muslim to church. Churches send their congregation to imams to tell them how Muhammad perfected Christ's words. Blasphemy.
So that you are not far off at all. So we actually here in Arkansas, where I live in my little corner of northeast Arkansas, there is a mosque here. Yes. And the woke Presbyterian church, and I'm pointing this way, is literally right up the road from where I'm pointing. I knew a guy who was, and I am Presbyterian, but I'm not a part of that particular denomination. I'm a part of another one that is conservative confessional. But anyway, what I'm saying is he actually left that church. He was giving it, they are already kind of woke in a lot of ways, but he was very, very, this guy, he's since passed away, bless his heart, but he was very attuned with the dangers of Islam, the infiltration of it, very, very engaged in that. And the pastor had a joint service with the mosque, and they all went to the mosque. So this is happening all over. And that was a bridge too far for him, and he left and he went and joined a church that doesn't believe that is good, right? So to your point, it is happening. This interfaith nonsense and it's really just universalism, and it'll send you to hell. So be careful of that.
They also call it Chrislam. The new name for it apparently is Chrislam. It's been growing for a while. I've been covering it for over a decade, but now openly Chrislam is growing, which again, a different topic for another time. But I suggest if you are a follower of Christ, read the Quran. If you don't want to do that, if you don't mind me plugging my Substack, I wrote a Substack titled Jesus of Nazareth versus Jesus of Islam. I give you all of it. It's almost, I think, 12 pages print, 12 pages of Substack. I gave you word by word.
What's your Substack? Go ahead and tell people what it is.
liveuptofreedom.substack.com.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, on that, I know we're talking about your book and everything, but I think, well, this would be a great, I don't think I ever got a full answer to the question. And so are you a believer? Are you a Christian now?
Absolutely. I was saved by him 9 years ago on a stage at
Praise
a Stone Church in Chicago.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you expand on that a little bit? Like, how were you drawn to Christ, or how did Christ draw you to himself?
That was a very fun story. I shouldn't laugh. I'm not even proud of it. But because of that Substack, the Jesus of Nazareth versus Jesus of Islam, I grew up knowing Jesus, right? We call him Isa. I grew up knowing this guy, and I hate him just as much as I hate Muhammad. I don't want to have anything to do with Isa. I come to America. I should tell you this first. I'm agnostic. I didn't come to Islam, and I'm done with Islam, but I don't really know what I'm doing until I get a phone call shortly after I arrived saying, your father died. And I'm like, how did he die? They're like, in his sleep. I hung up the phone. I'm like, there's no God. We're done. Let's go atheism. Because that man could not die peacefully in his sleep. So I go down the path of atheism first for a while, but then my logic keeps kicking in of, you don't really believe in this, do you? Like big bang, poof, something happened? No. So I went back to being agnostic. And Lord puts the first true Christian in my life as my boss, Dr. Jamie Glazov, the editor of Front Page Mag and the host of the Glazov Gang, and he hires me as his producer, and we start seeing each other once a week to do the show, all that. He starts telling me about Jesus, and I'm like, face was answering him. He's very patient. He continues. It's like, maybe you want to hear about his love. I'm like, no, thanks. Then he buys me a gift, and he just gives it to me. It's like, do what you want to do with it. I come home, open the gift. It's the New Testament. I throw it on my desk. I'm like, oh, these Christians are worse than Muslims. They just want to convert you. I'm sorry. I don't know better like that. And then Lord puts the next person in my life, a female, who is now my mama bear. She's amazing. I've grown to literally adore her like a mother. And once in a while, I'm talking or I finish something. She's like, you're a Christian. You just don't know it yet. I'm like, oh, here we go again. I kept denying. I kept running. And this goes on for a good probably 5 years. And Will Johnson, who's a great friend, calls me one day and say, hey, Annie, I'm putting together this, rally in Sacramento. Do you want to be one of the speakers? Tell your story. I'm like, sure. So we go to Sacramento. I get behind the microphone. I get like 15 minutes. We talk. It's 118 degrees. We're all melting over there. Finish the speech. And somebody screams in the middle of my speech saying, burn down all the mosques. And I'm like, no, don't burn them down. This is America. We don't burn things down. We build things up. Get in there and have a conversation with them. I step off the stage and one of the security guys comes to me and said, you're a follower, aren't you? I'm like, I'm a what? No, what? Follower of what? It's like, you're a Christian, right? I'm like, no, sir, I'm not. It's like, what you just said up there, that's a Christian word. You could have go with the crowd and say, yeah, let's go burn them down. I'm like, okay, you all need to stop telling me I'm a Christian. Next event happens at a stone church. I get on a stage. I start talking to the room. I get to the sentence of my father sold me for this much and go for a crack a joke of how much did he love me? $50, that is. And as I said that sentence, I physically felt a hand grabbing my heart, slowing down my heartbeat enough for me not to hear it anymore. And then in my left ear, I heard, that's okay. Your Heavenly Father loves you. That was not something I could fight anymore, Paul.
Wow.
I couldn't fight that anymore. That was it. I'm like, you got me. Fine. I won't fight you. I won't run from you.
But that you're saying that happened while you were giving the speech. You had this experience where you knew that there was a God in heaven who loves you while you're giving a speech. What was that like? And what did you do after that realization? After you got off the stage, did you go to somebody? Did you talk to somebody?
Not immediately. And that's the beauty of it. That video, that speech was recorded and given to me, and I posted that on YouTube, and it became my very first ever viral video with like 1.6 million views, including many comments from Muslims listening to that speech and going, Again, it's all him, right? I didn't know. I finished the speech. I stepped off the stage. I went outside, and I knew he got me, but I was still trying to see if I can find anything to turn that into a delusion. Maybe I'm tired. I'm hearing, like, can I find something that's not what I think it is? Took me about a week.
That's interesting, and the answer is no.
I know, I couldn't.
And
I tried for a week.
Yep.
I couldn't.
It's been called irresistible grace, or you could just say, well, God, God's not a punk. He the sheep hear his voice. But go ahead, continue.
Yes. Now, it took me a week, and I reached out to a dear friend who also, though I knew him for a very short period of time, but he came to be the closest thing I ever had to a father on earth, the late Phil Haney. I called him. So, Phil, this happened. I don't know what's happening, but something happened. And he talked to me. He talked to me. He didn't explain it. He carried me over from resisting to accepting by mainly telling me don't worry, he's not expecting you to. My translation was, okay, now I have this God, he's going to expect me to do things. What are those things? Because I don't want to be a slave again. I don't want to be a half a human again. I don't want any of that. So Phil explained to me that he's not going to ask you to do anything. You just surrender to him. And from there, my mama bear bought me my very first copy of Bible, taught me how to study the Bible. My other, Michael Lauber. Michael bought me a Christmas gift, a Farsi Bible, where he knew I'm struggling to fully understand the English Bible. So he bought me a Farsi Bible. And from there, I read and I learned and I found me a great home church. And yeah, life's great.
Wow, praise the Lord! Thank you so much for sharing that part of your testimony. So we're going to have to make this is going to definitely just need to be a standalone video. I'm certainly going to cut it that way because I've really enjoyed hearing your story from Iran, and from Iran, from Islam to Christianity, and now you're being used to warn our country about political Islam, immigration, all of that stuff. I know you have to go because I know we've gone over the hour that we had scheduled you to be here, but I do want to make sure that you get the last word on your book, and I want people to go buy it if they want to read further. And I feel like this interview is going to do what it's designed to do, which is pique people's interest in your book. But did we not cover anything that you wanted to cover? I just want to make sure that we've covered what you want to cover, Ani.
I appreciate you having me on, and thank you. Yes, I think we covered everything. The only thing I want to tell your audience is if you have any unease feelings, there's a lot going on around us, and I agree. Sometimes it's confusing, sometimes it's terrifying, sometimes it's making no sense. But you heard my testimony. Took me years, many years, too long, to realize that I didn't go through hell alone. He carried me through it and made sure that not only I'll make it, but I will make it back to him. When I'm asked to describe myself, I say I'm a child of God who was raised by the devil, but returned home to my Father. Remember that when you have that unease feeling. Remember that when you're getting angry, when you want to attack your neighbor, when you want to call somebody names. Remember all of that. That person, that individual, their actions, God is in control. And you don't need to waste your precious energy on negative. Stay with him, do your part, and he'll take care of the rest. I promise you, I'm right here, alive, giving you the testimony. He took care of it. He'll take care of you too.
And your testimony is, I'll summarize it, it is not difficult for God to walk a tightrope on your behalf. I couldn't walk a tightrope, but the Lord can, and he does it literally all the time, constantly. Your book, again, is The Architecture of Jihad, how inside the ideology of law and gospel, driving Islam's multi-front expansion. You see the cover there, and you can get it. I already posted the link in the LFA chat, and it also is in the link of the YouTube, this particular YouTube video as well. We'll make sure it gets in the other following videos. Annie,
and if I could add,
yes,
just in case, if any of your audience would like a signed copy, those are available on my website. You can get those on Amazon, liveuptofreedom.com. As if you like to pick up a signed copy, you can go there and order your signed copies.
All right, liveuptofreedom.com. You see it in the background there, liveuptofreedom.com. Annie, I hope you have a great weekend, and I'd love to have you back on the program soon, especially as these developments continue with Iran and the war going on there. God bless you, and thank you so much.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Stay safe, stay fearless, and I look forward to coming back on your program.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back here in just a minute. I am with you until the top of the hour, which is 6 Central or 7 Eastern. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Brian Norris, retired Army First Sergeant, husband to Kelly, father of 3 amazing girls, and a lifelong Arkansan who puts faith, family, and fair elections first. When Independence County demanded real election transparency, I led the charge, petitioning voters and winning at the Arkansas Supreme Court. Now, Little Rock bureaucrats are punishing counties like Searcy for putting voters first. That's not real conservatism. It's big government overreach in disguise. That's why Trump allies like General Michael Flynn, Mike Lindell, Justice Michael Gableman, Colonel Conrad Reynolds, Senator Wendy Rogers, and Senator Mark Fincham back me. Together, we'll secure Arkansas's elections and inspire the nation. As Secretary of State, I'll implement President Trump's executive order, verify citizenship, replace hackable voting computers, and build trust with verifiable paper ballots. I'll cut red tape for businesses, harness our natural gas and lithium boom, and attract tech jobs to grow Arkansas strong. This is our fight, our future. Join us.
Paid for by Norris for Arkansas.
Behind every precious life, there was a choice. Behind every family moment, behind every special memory, there was a choice. A life of joy. A life that is beautifully and wonderfully made. At 7 Weeks Coffee, we are funding the pro-life movement, one cup at a time. Will you let your coffee serve a greater purpose?
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. We're broadcasting live right now on LFA TV, and can't do the show without you guys watching. Really appreciate it. A lot of you in the comments are understandably very pleased with that interview that we just did, that Annie Cyrus just did, because you can't come away from that without feeling good, feeling hopeful, feeling encouraged, even in the midst of what's going on in Iran. And I'm just so thankful that we got to hear her perspective on that. And just as a perspective that many of us growing up in this great country, we can't even imagine being sold into marriage at 13 for $50. You know, can't imagine that. And so, as Eric Haynes and I were talking on Wednesday, we were talking about how God is in control and everything. And, you know, for whatever reason, you getting up out of bed this morning, it means that even that simple act is now part of God's plan for human history and ultimately his plan for redemption of his people. And Annie's confession on the show that she is a believer in Jesus Christ and is now a Christian, it's just incredible how that all works out. For whatever reason, the bombs being dropped once again in the Middle East are also, just like you getting up out of bed in the morning, which seems so trivial compared to the life and death scenarios going on right now in the Middle East, and us praying, or at least me praying, that we don't send ground troops. But for whatever reason, this conflict has now happened, and it is a part of God's plan for redemption in some way, shape, or form. And I keep thinking, I think you keep going back to what she said at the beginning of the interview when we talked about the millions of Christians who are in Iran right now, underground churches. And one thing we didn't actually get to talk about was just the geography of Iran, and what a massive country that is. I mean, if you look at it on a map and you were to lift it up and put it on, it's like the size of Europe, minus the British Isles. It's just crazy. What a large. So the idea of a ground war there is insane. The idea of ground troops there is absolutely insane. I don't know what's going to happen, but. And, she said it, you really can't tell. You really cannot tell what's going to happen because the messaging is all over the place. Trump says this, Trump says that. It's all over the place. I've got half an hour left with you guys. And I could take the show a few different ways. I've got so many clips. I've got fun clips I could play. There's that trans guy, there's that woman pretending to be a man who melts down in the court and everything else. But you know what? I think this is the time. I do this once a year where I dust off this YouTube video and I want to walk you guys through it because I think, in light of what we just heard, that this is the appropriate time. And I even I had it pulled in case I wanted to go through this. But the other day we played for you this old clip from the 1980s of Francis Schaeffer. Francis Schaeffer was a late theologian, and in the 80s he was on with Pat Robinson, and he was talking about the complacency of Christians and how we had we had basically failed in a lot of ways to understand that Christ is not just the God of the church; He is the God of everything, and everything belongs to Him, even public life. And I mentioned that Dr. Francis Schaeffer, he wrote a very good book. He's written a bunch of books, but he wrote a very, very good book called How Should We Then Live? And it's a fantastic book. And it's the question. It's a question. How should we then live? In light of Christ, in light of His church, and in light of the world around us that continues to be chaotic, that as Christ has gone forward and really has gone forward throughout all of human history, the forces of evil get stirred up. There are ripple effects. There's still war. There's still famine. There's still death for a time. And in light of all of that, how should we then live? And the we in this particular sentence or question is Christians. So he made a YouTube video. No, he didn't make a YouTube video. I'm sorry. Forgive me. He made a... Francis Schaeffer did not make a YouTube video. He made a series that you used to get on VHS tape. And so this was made a long time ago. And so you can tell that it was made a long time ago. But it is incredible, and I'm not just going to play this thing and walk away. We're going to go through it together because it's fascinating. The production value is going to be interesting to you, I can tell you. It starts off like this, so you can kind of already tell. It actually is, as he says, a 10-part series, but on YouTube you can get these. I would encourage all of you to go watch them because it is fascinating. And episode 1 is the Roman age. So how did the church survive during the Roman age and as the Roman age is, totally collapsing? So look, this is how chaotic things were back in the day when he made this in the 70s or 80s. So you start, again, the idea is all of this chaotic stuff going on. War, famine, death, violence, I'll even throw in there, I'll even throw in this. We are at this point where we have the AI surveillance technology to enslave us. And so we are amongst this this phenomenon or cycle, and we have been for a long time, where you have an immoral population that keeps doing things that are bad. And really, the more pagan we become, it's not... Some of the things that people find morally objectable are, in fact, good things, right? Calling evil things good and good things evil. But there is this cycle where people are going to break a law or people are going to do something bad. Oh, well, we don't want them to do that. So let's pass a law that if they do that, they're either put in jail, pay a fine, or they're killed, okay? And guess what? Immoral people always find a way to still do it or to create a loophole to where it's not against the law. So what does the government do? Well, we need more laws. So they put more laws. And this is the cycle. Immoral people find a way around the laws. Then we have more laws and more and more and more. And this is what is one of the reasons why this is driving. The better our technology gets. Well, you know what? We can control a lot of things if we just put a camera in every room in everybody's home, or put a camera in everybody's eyeball, or, oh, I don't know, you could go the whole Tom Cruise route. If we could find a way to get an AI quantum computer to predict who's going to murder, we can put them in jail before they do. This is the cycle here. In light of that, really nothing is new under the sun. How should we then live is the question that Francis Schaeffer was trying to answer. And I think actually did answer, but he did it by looking back at how the church survived up until this point, which is a great question. This production value is
there is a flow
amazing.
In history and culture. This flow is rooted in what people think, and what they think will determine how they act.
There is violence and a breakdown in society up to the point in which it's unsafe to walk through the streets in many of the cities of the world. On the other hand, there is a danger of an increasing authoritarianism to meet the threat of chaos in our own countries and internationally. Should we despair and give in? If not, how should we then live?
That's a great
question.
The
answer as to whether we should throw up our hands and give in is no. There are good and sufficient reasons for this. We can receive help from a quarter, which would be unexpected to most modern men. But to understand how, we have to delve back into history.
All right, so bear with me, folks. Not only, I mean, can you imagine making this? I got to find out exactly. Hang on. I got to find out exactly when. I'm sorry. I got to find out exactly when the series was made. I should know this, because I just think to myself, how much money did it cost to rent the horses in the Roman costume, charioteer? How should we, let's see, should we then live video series? Let's see here. Is it going to tell me? Yeah, you've got an Amazon thing. Will that give me the year? Well, is this the video or this is the book? The DVD. This is unfortunately a question. This is unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, a question. I've got to know, though. You have to forgive me. I have to know this. Well, here, let me just play this, and I'll retire to my nerdery real quick.
I will begin with the time of the Romans, because the Roman civilization is the direct ancestor of the modern European world. From the time of the earliest conquests under the Republic, right down to our own day, Roman law and Roman political ideas have influenced the European scene, the whole Western civilization. The Roman Empire was great, both in size and military strength. It reached out over
1977. The budget for cameras and stuff, I just would love to know how much all this cost. I mean, this may be stock footage here, but and maybe the white horses and the chariot stuff was as well. I don't know.
Over much of the known world. Its roads led over all of Europe, the Near East, and North Africa. All the way from Hadrian's Wall, which was built to keep out the Scots, who were too tough to conquer, to the forts on the Rhine River, to the north of Africa.
This is hilarious in the Elevate comment section. Eileen Jimenez says the 90s. Let me guess what it was made. The 90s. We have Bit or Bite Chomper says 71. What did I say it was? 77. Okay, so by comparison, I'll just throw this out there. I know this is just a documentary study, and so it's not on par with a Hollywood movie of 77, but I still think you could make this comparison. The reason Star Wars was such a visual spectacle is because Star Wars came out in 1977. So this was the standard of so can you imagine just people losing their minds at the special effects, because this was the standard in 77.
To the Euphrates River and the Caspian Sea. In one conquest, the Roman legions crossed the Alps, came down the Rhone Valley past the peaks of the Dent de Midi to that place which is now called Vevey in Switzerland. For a time, the Helvetians, the principal inhabitants of Switzerland, held them in check and made the proud Romans pass under the yoke, ironically imitating the custom of the Romans, who had the warriors they conquered pass under a yoke. This was a temporary reversal. Not much could hold back the Roman legions, neither difficult terrain nor the armies of their enemies. They passed up over the hills and conquered the ancient Helvetian capital, Aventicum, today called Avanches. One can imagine a Roman legionnaire who slogged home from the vastness of the north.
Okay, I'm going to forward a little bit because we all know the Roman Empire was mighty.
Some have said, although I think it's a high figure, that at one time 40,000 Romans lived here. Tries to build only on its...
Here, listen to this. This is the part.
When a culture tries to build only on its military strength, very, very soon, these will prove not to be sufficient, for the simple reason that without a sufficient base of knowing what is right, what is wrong, why we should do certain things in contrast to why we should do certain others, no amount of military might is sufficient.
This is true, and on that note, you can apply that to the United States of America right now. Right now. It's something to keep in mind.
Rome first tried to build upon the decisions of accepted citizens of the Republic, and later on the decisions of its emperors. But the attempt ultimately failed, because it was not a sufficient base on which to build a society. And they never had the kind of democracy we have, where everybody shares in it. But for those who were the real citizens of the state, they just tried to build on their opinions, and this totally failed. And then they turned to their gods. This is the goddess Diana, whose temple was in Ephesus, which is in modern Turkey. The Romans, like the Greeks before them, also tried to build upon their gods, in the hope of having something big enough upon which to rest their society.
90-foot tall monkey statues
were not big enough
in Texas
because they were finite.
90
that is, they were limited.
I'm throwing that out there. We have 90-foot tall monkey statues in Texas.
They were like bigger men and women, not basically different from human men and women. They were amplified humanity, not divinity. This being so, the Romans had no sufficient base intellectually. That is, they did not have anything big enough or permanent enough to which to relate either their thinking or their life. Therefore, they had no value system strong enough to bear the strains of life, either individual or political.
Had no value system to bear the strains of life. And again, this is all in the context of the church. So at this time, you also have early Christians who do have those things, who do have the firm foundation that gives them the strength to bear the suffering and the strains of life, and also gives people a firm foundation to build on, to build civilization on.
All their gods together could not give them a sufficient base for life, morals, values, or final decisions. The Romans made their own gods depending upon their society, and when the society tumbled, their gods tumbled with them. Thus, the Roman experiment in social harmony, based on an elitist republic, ultimately failed. The Senate no longer could keep order. Armed gangs terrorized the city of Rome, and the normal functions of government.
It's like exactly what the Senate is dysfunctional, and we have armed gangs. Now we have people that are trying to get rid of them and deport them. But is anybody freaked out a little bit by this?
Government were disrupted as rivals fought for power. Self-interest took the place of social interest, no matter how sophisticated the trappings. Thus, in desperation, the people accepted authoritarian government. In the days of Julius Caesar, Rome turned to an authoritarian system centered in Caesar himself. As Plutarch put it, the Romans made Caesar dictator for life, in the hope that the government of a single person would give them time to breathe after so many civil wars and calamities. This was indeed a tyranny avowed, since his power now was not only absolute, but perpetual too. After Caesar's death, Octavian, later called Caesar Augustus, grandnephew of Caesar, came to power. The great Roman poet Virgil, friend of Augustus, wrote in his Aeneid, saying that Augustus was a divinely appointed leader, and that Rome's mission was to bring peace and civilization to the world. Because Augustus offered external and internal peace, while keeping the outward forms of legal constitutionality, Romans of every class were ready to allow him total power in order to restore and assure the functioning of the political system, of business, and the affairs of daily life. After 12 BC, he became the head of the state religion with the title Pontifex Maximus. All men were urged to worship the spirit of Rome and the genius of the emperor. Later, this became obligatory for all the people of the empire.
Which is what got Christians into so much trouble.
And later still, the emperors simply ruled as gods. Augustus tried to legislate morals and family life. Later emperors tried impressive legal reforms and welfare programs. But a human god was a poor foundation, and Rome fell. It is important to realize the difference a people's worldview makes to their strength as they're exposed to the pressures of life. In the Roman era, we must understand that when one became a Christian, it meant that he stood not only opposed to the surrounding religions, but the entire culture built on those religions. Could perhaps be best picked.
Skipping ahead to the persecution, because
Rome was cruel, and its cruelty could perhaps be best pictured by the events which took place in the Roman arenas. For example, the gladiator one sees in this statue. Or the Christians thrown to the beasts as people watched. Let us not forget why the Christians were killed. They were not killed because they worshiped Jesus. At that time, many religions were practiced in the Roman world. Some were called the mystery religions. Here, for example, we can see one of the initiatory rites practiced by one of these religions, depicted in this Roman house in Pompeii. Nobody cared who worshipped whom, as long as the unity of the state was maintained, centered in the worship of the emperor. The Christians were killed because they were rebels, and this was especially so as they lost the support of the Jewish synagogues, and therefore the immunity which the Jews had since the time of Caesar. We may express the nature of this rebellion in two ways, both of which are true. We can say they worship Jesus as God, and they worship the personal, infinite God only. This worshiping of the one God only, Caesar could not tolerate. It was counted as treason. This became a special threat to the unity of the state based on emperor worship during the reign of Diocletian in the 3rd century, when people of the higher classes began to become Christians in larger numbers. The second thing, however, is something that we're apt to forget, and that is that they really did believe that the Old Testament and the revelation in Christ and the growing New Testament, it was growing then, of course, say the 1st century, was God who had spoken, and that God had given truth. And as such, they were not caught in the flux of the relativistic Roman world, because it really was relativistic, much like our own day.
Now, this part is one of my favorites.
A weak base for a culture or an individual can only stand when the pressures are not too great. As an illustration, let us take this bridge. The Romans built many little humpback bridges like this over the streams of Europe. People and wagons went over them safely for centuries, for 2 millennia. But now, if someone would drive a heavily loaded truck over these, they would break. It is this way with the lives and value systems of individuals and cultures. If they have nothing stronger to build upon than their own finiteness, their own limitedness, they can stand if the pressures are not too great. But as the pressures mount, if they do not have a sufficient base, they crash, just as these Roman bridges would crash if someone drove over them with a modern 10-ton truck. Culture and the freedoms of men are fragile. If there's not a sufficient base, it only takes time, and often not a great deal of time, before there is a collapse.
I know this seems basic and rudimentary, but
the Christians buried their dead and met for worship.
This we need the
who
reminder.
were able to resist the religious mixtures, syncretism, and the effects of the weaknesses of Rome in being made in the image of God. There was a reason for the basic dignity and value of each individual. If they had worshipped Jesus and Caesar, they would have gone unharmed. But they worshipped one God only and rejected all forms of syncretism. Sexuality. As their empire ground down, the Romans, in their decadence, were given to a great thirst for violence and the gratification of their senses, as in their rampant sexuality. Here in Pompeii, a century or so after the Republic had ceased to exist, the phallus cult was strong. Paintings and statuary of exaggerated sexual content adorned the houses of the affluent. Not all the art in Pompeii was like this, but that which was of sexual representation was just plain blatant. Rome collapsed, not from external, but from internal weaknesses. Even though Emperor Constantine ended the persecution of the Christians, and Christianity became a legal religion in 313 AD, and the official state religion of the empire in 381 AD, the majority of the people went on in their old ways. Apathy was the chief mark of the period. The elite abandoned intellectual life for their social life.
Personal peace.
Apathy also showed itself in the arts, with a lack of creativity.
Listen to this.
Officially sponsored art became decadent. The music became increasingly bombastic. Look at these 4th century works here on the Arch of Constantine. And in contrast, these handsome 2nd century works of art taken from earlier monuments from the period of Emperor Trajan.
So their art got worse.
This portrait of Emperor Valentinian is so much inferior to this likeness of Emperor Nero, which was minted 300 years earlier.
Their art got worse because they got
all of life
worse
was
morally
by the prevailing apathy. And as the Roman economy slumped lower and lower, burdened by a costly government and by inflation, authoritarianism increased in order to try to set off the apathy. And as less people were inclined to work, the state took over more and more freedoms were lost. For example, laws were passed binding the small farmer to his land. And because of the apathy and its results and the oppression, few people thought the old civilization was worth saving.
This is incredible. And again, this is Dr. Francis Schaeffer. The book or video series is called How Should We Then Live? And I would encourage everybody out there to read it if you haven't, or you can go on YouTube and you can watch all these videos. I tried to dive in. This is the Roman age, and he goes through the medieval age. And so I really appreciate that. I also appreciate the LFA TV audience, your compliments about the show and you guys liking the show and liking the content that I'm trying to bring you. I do really appreciate it. And I do want to remind you, if you're not ever able to watch the show on LFA TV on Rumble, you can get this program on in the podcast form. So we are on Spotify and we are on Apple. On the Spotify side, you can see the video as well as obviously the audio. On the Apple side, you just get the audio-only version. But I just wanted everybody out there to know that if you want to catch this show, but you're not able to be on LFA TV on Rumble, you can always get us. You can always watch a show that you missed. If you just search Paul Harrell Program on Apple or Spotify, you can become a subscriber that way. It doesn't cost you anything. So that is all the time that I have for this edition of the show. I really appreciate you guys, this particular broadcast. I want to thank Annie Cyrus, and I want to remind everybody to go to church. If you don't go to church, I would encourage you to please find a church that preaches the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And if you do go to church, it is my prayer that everybody on the other side of the screen has a happy and blessed Lord's Day, and that you worship Him in spirit and truth. And we will see you on Monday.